I'll turn it over to Duncan.
Thank you, Christine. Couple procedural items for this meeting. We are meeting virtually. So we are going to ask you to make sure you state your name before you talk, so we know who's speaking. And also during the public comment period, if you do have a public comment, we'd ask you to come to the podium. In the past, standing up in the audience works for you, but it doesn't, your voice doesn't always reach the mic, so people in the audience haven't, or virtually have not heard very well. So we have put a mic at the podium, so if you could come to the podium, state your name and make your comment, that would be great. The executive order, I did send the executive order out to the council members with your last packet or prior to your last packet about some of the procedural stuff. We did note that the executive order ended, I believe, at the end of August or the 1st of September, somewhere in there. We did work with the governor's office. He has extended that executive order and has also extended your appointments. I volunteered you to say, yes, you wanted to be on, you wanted to be a continue. The part of the argument was that for the entire year, you guys have worked through this revision process. And, you know, it's very important for at least you guys to stay on through this. So, the executive order has been extended in your appointments for 1 year. So you're on until next, the first part of September.
Thank you, Landon.
Yes. One other, I guess, introduction here. We do have Caleb Yearling sitting on the, as a technical support for Fish, Wildlife and Parks. He's representing Fish, Wildlife and Parks on the council.
Welcome.
So with that, I do believe I did actually the first, I have not. So once again, we are recording this. We ask you to announce your names. The agenda for today's meeting, we're going to go through the broken circle split season lease. And we will go through the 2023 revision to the restoration plans. And then at the end, we will talk about the next meeting that we'll probably schedule for sometime in early November for us to provide you with the annual update of both projects and financial. So there are 2 action items that we're working on today. As I just said, broken circle and the revisions. We will provide the project update to you, and we'll provide time for the advisory council to ask questions and for the public to come forward and ask questions. We do have a proposed motion that we will put up for the advisory council, and we will edit that on the fly. You guys can see exactly what the motion is. And then the motion will go out for public comment, and then the council members will vote on a recommendation of that motion. So that's the general process, or this is the process, not the general process. This is the process that we use for both of the action items today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Markoliak to talk about the broken circle split season lease.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug says, I'm Brian, Natural Resource down in Florida. Would like to introduce Jeremy and Jennifer Nicholson. They are the owners of Broken Circle Ranch, and we'll be talking about their funding recommendation first. So the project covers a fairly large area.
The very top one.
Okay. You guys have pointed here. So the project is located about 3. Sorry, I can't help us. The project is just out the Deer Lodge and starts where the Valentin ditch comes off the Clark Fork River. It's about 5 miles of a leaky irrigation ditch. It currently involves 3 different properties. The property purchased from the Nicholsons in 2019. The property currently owned by the Greco family, and then the property owned by Broken Circle. So little background, again, as I said, the Clark Fork River Ranch was purchased from the Nicholsons in 2019. It was purchased for a few reasons. It has about 2,600 acres of, it's about 2,600 acres. It has, terrestrial value. It has about 5 miles of the Clark Fork River. It was purchased to aid in the remediation and restoration of the river, to be used as a resource in that cleanup. It was also purchased for its terrestrial habitat, as well as significant water rights on Valentin Ditch. One of the resource benefits identified in the funding recommendation was to use water from Valentin Ditch more efficiently to benefit aquatic life in this critically dewatered section of the Clark Fork River. And this is one of the most dewatered sections of the Clark Fork River. So before I get too far, what is a split season lease? Split season lease basically allows the water right user to use their water during the early season, and then lease their water for in-stream flow for the rest of the season. This has mutual benefits. It allows agricultural productivity and also benefits the fishery resource. We have been working on this project for quite some time. In a nutshell, and I'll explain this more in a little bit in the next slide. We are allowing water use to continue up to July 15th on all years, irregardless of flow. If the flows in the Clark Fork measured at Deer Lodge stay above optimal levels or 180 CFS, the irrigators can continue to use the water. This isn't very likely, or this isn't very common. On average, about 9 out of 10 years, the water will drop below these levels. And we are not only the Nicholsons and our other partners we're working with, we're requiring them not only to sign a restoration project agreement, but as part of that project agreement to have a submitted DNRC change application. Again, this allows agriculture productivity to continue and returns water to the river. Our partners, Clark Fork Coalition, mainly Andy, have measured actual real water going down this ditch at about 13 CFS in the late season. And just as comparison, Andy's also measured flow in the main stem Clark Fork at this area to be about 20 CFS below the ditch and exceeding temperature thresholds for trout for a number of days. So the original water rights purchased with the Clark Fork River Ranch were 40 CFS. Again, this is paper water. There's paper water and real water, and so this is paper water that was broken as part of the sale is to 24 CFS and then split between the Great Grove and Broken Circle. The project, as I explained, involves 3 areas. So this is the Clark Fork River Ranch and two pivots. We've been working. So after the purchase of the ranch, we worked with Nicholson's and they had the right of first refusal for those areas for the first 3 years. As part of their agreement, we allowed them to continue using these pivots, and then we asked them to shut down water use after July 15th. The Greicos eventually bought this piece from the Nicholsons as well. They have their own water rights, and then we've been working with the Greicos since this is the second official year working with the Greicos on the agreement, where we have an arrangement that they can use our pivots and our water in exchange for the same agreement after July 15th or when flows drop. Then they discontinue use of water in these pivots and also discontinue use of their water and their pivots after July 15th. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to best use this water. We had a lot of discussions with the Nicholsons about how to get these irrigated acres off Valentin Ditch so we can discontinue use of the ditch in late season. And through many meetings, Jeremy finally said, why don't we just have a similar deal? What were you doing with the Greicos? We said, well, Jeremy, that's a really good idea. We should work on that. And so that's how we ended up here. So we've done some evaluation and we've looked at the reduced productivity for a split season lease on this area. And their estimated reduction, not being able to irrigate and get a second cutting is about $20,200. Projecting that out for 20 years or the expected life of the infrastructure, that's about $404,000. The Clark Fork Coalition has been working with the Columbia Basin Water Transaction Program, and Andy just gave me some good news the other day that we have an initial nod from the Columbia Basin Water Transaction Program that they are willing to fund this project for $200,000. And again, we will be pursuing an in-stream flow change. We did take this out for public comment. It was out from July 21st to August 23rd. We got four comments back, all supportive. The response to comments is in your packet that was emailed out. But we went through the cost effectiveness, cost benefits. Split season leases are successful. They've been used in Washington and Oregon quite effectively at providing good late season resource benefit while still maintaining productivity. Again, that allows agriculture to continue and resource benefits. Again, the Clark Fork Coalition have monitored flows in the main stem as low as 20 CFS last year and exceeding temperature thresholds for more than 60 days. Again, we just got the initial nod that there's a very good potential of $200,000 coming from the Columbia Basin Water Transaction Program. And I say very good potential because it's similar to the AC. It still needs to be voted on by the Andy, votes on it.
Northwest Power and Conservation Council.
Yeah, so similar to you, you'll make the recommendation to the TRC, they'll make the recommendation to the governor. So, I mean, it's same with this council. It's unlikely that the TRC or the governor would go against your recommendation, but it's not a done deal until it is voted out by the Powell Council. This had a high cost benefit at $404,000 with matching funds secured to the Clark Fork Coalition. It's a very high cost benefits. Again, the water is available. Andy's measured water in this ditch, 13 CFS. That's real water. That's not paper water. That's real water available for the river in late season. We do require a restoration project agreement and an ENRC change application. We have been monitoring flows above and below the ditch, and temperature. And we've also, we've been doing a quite intensive monitoring of the crop health with the split season lease. And we had a very good presentation to our stream flow working group the other day. Got a lot of really good feedback about how is this affecting crop health? Is it leading to bare spots? Are some species starting to dry up while other species are taking over? That will continue for another year. Then we'll have a report. And so that is ongoing. Again, flows will benefit fishery. There will benefit fish populations in the main stem. Increased flows are also benefit recreational opportunities. These water rights, at least there's a number of them, but the ones that we're talking about here are senior to the Milltown water rights, so they won't have potential to be called as part of Milltown and will mitigate the effects of any potential call. And this is a good agreement, a continuation of agriculture open space while balancing resource needs in the Upper Clark Fork Basin. Again, we did receive 4 public comments on this. All were very supportive. Just to read some of the quotes from the comments. This project delivers water to the Upper Clark Fork River when it's needed most, while still maintaining agricultural productivity. The lease will reduce irrigation withdrawals and chronically dewatered reach of the Clark Fork. improving stream flow during critical late season conditions to support the recovery of the Clark Fork River fishery. This project is an example of a productive partnership between a local water user and the state agency that will have benefits to both Broken Circle Ranch, fisheries resources, and the recreating public. All the comments acknowledge that this is one of the most chronically dewatered sections of the river. And one commenter specifically requested to study the effects of split season leases, which we are already doing. And she was actually at the presentation about 2 weeks ago that we presented at. We will continue to monitor flows and temperature and fishery benefits. There might be some additional monitoring required as part of the DNRC change application. FWP continue to monitor the fishery in this area, and we have another year of looking at the effects of split season leases on crop health. And with that, the NRDP staff recommendation is we recommend funding this project in the amount of up to $404,000 from the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Restoration Fund, the Aquatic Flow Allocation, following execution of a restoration project agreement with the Nicholsons, and with the contingency that match funds are obtained, the funding would be reduced by the amount of those funds. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christy and Doug for questions and discussion.
First, any questions from the advisory council on the Broken Circle project?
Yes, Mary.
This is Maggie Schmidt. Could you just highlight what the preliminary findings are on the effects on crops?
Yes. Can I ask you to go up to the podium and repeat that question?
Sorry, I thought it was just.
We're just trying to get in the habit of doing it.
This is Maggie Schmidt from the Advisory Council. I am just wondering if Brian can comment briefly on the highlights from the effects on crops from split season leases.
Thank you, Maggie. So in the years that we've been doing intensive monitoring, it has been a lot driven by the normal precipitation in the area. Last year was not as good as this year. This year, the productivity is exceeded, I think, even historical highs by the Nicholsons. Some of the wetter species are drying out in terms of grasses, and please don't ask me which ones those are. I could tell you.
Come on.
The alfalfa health is looking really good. There are, we've been doing drone flights and aerial photography. It doesn't seem like bare spots are increasing. One of the problem areas is there's a wedge between the two pivots that was historically sub-irrigated. That is getting a little drier and a little weedier. It's also where cattle are concentrated because there's a stock water tank there. We had an NRCS out, and we are actually looking at doing some interseeding of some different species in that area to try to promote more drier species. But it seems to be more of a management issue than a split season lease issue. This year was really, they had 7 to 10 days of that flow stayed above the optimal levels, so they were able to re-water that pivot for that, and that seemed to make a big benefit. So I think a lot of it is working with the water users on the management of it, and that re-watering seems to be really important to crop health.
Has there been any, sorry.
They can hear the talk here.
I guess I
can talk to the.
Did they just say I have a big mouth?
No.
Sorry, Meg, I guess I didn't think you need to make it. I think it's the audience.
Okay. And I'll speak up. Has there been any indication or interest by MSU as far as the studies on the crops? They have graduate students looking for projects all the time. That would seem like a nice thing to coordinate with MSU.
We are actually working with, I'm sorry, it's going to be about
I live in Missoula. I
Okay.
graduated from MSU.
Yeah,
So you
so
can't
we've
really.
been working with a professor at U of M. And his grad students are looking at split season leases from kind of a different perspective about the kind of social and economic effects of split season leases. But they are doing, one of the recommendations from the presentation was to get the, you have to help me out, Ted, but get more people helping out in looking at the split season leasing. What is it, the experimental station?
Ag experiment stations.
Ag experiment station. That's one of the things that we're going to follow up on.
I would think that MSU would have some, I mean, to integrate maybe both of them, maybe they could play nicely together, the Grace and the Cap on this issue.
Just on this.
Yeah, but I mean, to help with determining what species of grass
Yeah.
is most beneficially used in this situation.
NRCS was out in August and they gave us some recommendations. There's a lot of places apparently in Wyoming and Colorado that are doing this. They're doing it for a different reason. They're just plain running out of water so they call it deficit irrigation, so split season leasing. But they had a lot of really good recommendations. I'd be happy to provide them as to what those species are. Don't ask me what they are. Off my head, please. It's not a report yet, it's a presentation, but we can make that presentation available.
The question for the record from Doug was, is Amy's report available?
Yes, the report, we have one more year of monitoring before the official report is completed, but we'd be happy to share the presentation and the initial results.
Because I think if landowners could benefit from that information, that might make split season leases more,
That is exactly the idea, yeah, I mean, and then there's, as it's been pointed out numerous times to me, I do not operate pivots, I do not know how to operate pivots. But that is one of the perceptions that we've heard, that if you go down the split season lease, that you're gonna affect crop health, and you might, but I think there's ways to mitigate it. So that's some of the information that we want to get out as part of this lease project. Yes, Maggie.
Is Maggie Schmidt, is the NRDP only interested in split lease opportunities that will result in in-stream flow changes? Like official in-stream flow, water rights?
Our funding is only available if there is a direct, to use the flow pot of money, there has to be a direct flow benefit.
But does that have to be in terms of a change in the water rate?
It doesn't, it will be it's all site specific, and that's one of the discussions we had with the NRC. And a lot of, so there are benefits to in-stream flow change. It protects the water user and it protects the water in stream. There are instances where it is not necessary to do one. And those are all very site specific. Like if you were the last water user on a certain tributary and there's nobody below you, what is the point of doing the change application? But those are all very site specific things that we would have to look at.
I just, in my mind, I'm thinking there might be more opportunities if that wasn't something that was required.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's not always required. We just need to be careful that we are protecting our investment in a project while getting the water up. And that's actually a question that Valerie and I were talking about yesterday. You know, in this case, you know, we know there's 13 CFS. And we know the next water user is Broken Circle anyway. So there's a lot of reasons not to do one. But there are also a lot of reasons to do it because there is another diversion directly below their next diversion to protect that part. And you want to go to public?
Any other questions from the council? And then we'll open it up for questions from the public.
Or support from the public?
Any comments from the public? All right.
No, I think Jen was.
Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't see.
I'm Jen Nicholson. I'm with the Broken Circle Ranch, and we just have a question. Through a split season, how would it affect for new seating?
We can, that is not in our agreement, and that is something that we have in the agreement with the Grecos, and that's something that we can put in there, and like, I think what we would do, if you say every 7 years you need new seating, we'd write that into the agreement and say during that new season, you can irrigate all season. And we try to work with you and predict what the weather is going to do for the best year in year 6, 7, 8 to do that seeding.
Right. So one of the questions that you had was, what do you see as a potential impact of the grasses? We've kept pretty close records for the last 20 years. And that was my concern is, okay, so this year we actually got a late start in order to get seed in, and then you have to shut off by the 15th. What if those plants have not, fully germinated, fully gotten started, and then all of a sudden you're shutting that off? Is that going to be an issue, that we're looking at directing? And it is something, because if it isn't going to be successful, then they have to be reseeded at some point in time. That's just the bottom line. Then it's kind of all for naught. So I think that is something that definitely has to be built in to your plans, is that at some point there will have to be, and depending upon when you purchase the rights, where are they at in their cycle? Is it the first, maybe they just did all the new seeding 2 years ago, so it'll be out, or maybe it's going to be due next year. So, looking at those type of aspects as well, if you're really looking to generate this for the future proposals, that will need to be something that is put into those contracts in order for it to be successful. Otherwise, I think you will get a lot of pushback because it's only good for one growth cycle and then you're out. So, when we look at the benefit for us, we've gotten a lot of pushback, like, well, what are you guys doing? Why? Jeremy and I, all of our kids are slave labor or however you want to, they're all in college. They're all gone. So pack and pipe is getting more and more difficult for us. So from that standpoint, but the efficiency wise to being able to really look at the health of the river, because it is a benefit for us as well, whether it be for wildlife or fish. For when, our kids love to enjoy that more so than us because we're packing pipe. But to really have that available, we know when it's dewatered, and we used to be the only one on the ditch until we started, separating those off. Now, literally during that time this last year, we were still the only one on the ditch because you guys aren't, Gricos aren't. And it's like, we're still putting the water in the ditch and it's not staying in the river. So then that's when we've kind of been going, okay, what are our options here? How can this is kind of crazy if you have that much, but it's still coming through our head gates. So what can we do for our part? Because it is something that we have always been very conscientious about the conservation. Because if you don't have healthy crops for your cows, you're not gonna have healthy crops for anything else either. So, or ground. And ours was a big weed management deal. That's kind of when we came here, that was very important to us, Brian. So making sure that, those grounds are taken care of during the year, reducing, the amount. So like when we have the studies for those guys coming in from the college, I think that's a really good thing too, is to see those impacts. So, any other questions you guys might have for us over here? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing. Any other questions, comments from public? All right. In fact, do you want to do motion now, or are you doing a multiple? Yes,
Yeah.
we're doing motion. All right. All right. Anybody from the council want the screen shows us a proposed motion that these guys put together for us, so we don't have to make it up on the fly. We can edit it as we deem necessary or see fit. Anybody on the council want to make a motion?
I'll motion.
Billy.
Kowalski, I motion that the NRDP recommends funding of this project in the amount of up to $404,000 from the UCFRB Restoration Fund Aquatic Flow Allocation following execution of the restoration project agreement with the contingency that if matching funds are obtained from the funding the funding would be reduced by the amount of those funds.
I'll second that motion. Maggie Schmidt.
Fantastic. Everybody on the council in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Oh, okay. Does the public have any comment on the motion? Any questions on the motion? Now hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you, Brian. Now we will get into the longer part of the program here. I know you're not supposed to apologize for presentations, but we looked at this presentation, both Brian's and mine. Brian was able to add a little more color to his. I do not have a lot of color in my presentation, but we had difficulty trying to write it, and so we did. But anyways, for the 2023 revision, I'm going to give a brief overview of what we put out for public comment and what we presented to you at the last meeting. I will provide a summary of the public comments that we received, as well as our responses. I'll go over the NRDP recommendation, and then we'll go to the question and motion process. I will note that when I go over the summary of the comments, I am just providing a brief summary of the comments. As you'll see that we've received a large number of comments on this, and we don't have time to hit all of the comments.
You do?
Yes.
Will the motion include everything, or will there be individual motions on individual?
The motion will include everything.
For the record, that was Steve Hill's question.
Sorry.
But when we get that, Steve, we'll walk through that. I think I can. Yeah. So a brief summary, sections 1 and 2 of the restoration plan. The only thing we had in this section were administrative updates. For instance, the discussion of the public comment period and our process that we went through. So administratively, we had that. Section 3, and this is the aquatic section. This is where we had the most revisions, or we proposed the most activity. The first revision actually goes to the process that Brian just went through. In 2012, when we first established this plan, the process that we felt we were going to get flow into the Clark Fork was through acquisition of water rights. Over the last 10 plus years, we have found out that that is not the case. And working with DNRC, Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and our partners and the Upper Clark Fork River, the working group on flow, there are a lot of other options out there that we need to be looking at. And the revision that are proposing here, or proposed here, is to allow some of these types of projects that Brian just talked about to move through the process, because they do take such a long time. Much like our watershed projects, or the projects where we work on tributaries where we put in a fish screen. We work with those irrigators to come up with a project. We come up with a project agreement, and once we get it finalized, we will actually implement that. And then you would be provided that in your annual update. And that would be so, but we would also make sure that, you know, all of the criteria were met on all the projects. So there's well-defined flow rate. It was in a protectable area. We consulted with our agency partners to make sure that it was a priority project. And it would be provided to you in the annual updates. The one thing that would not change is the water rights, exceptions. If we were to buy a water right, all acquisitions, we would come to the advisory council prior to moving forward with that project. So, for instance, the project that Brian just went through, we would actually work through that process, and then we would just update you guys on that at the annual meeting. The next big section was revision, was to allocate funding to the main stem Clark Fork to work on passage, entrainment projects along the Clark Fork. In 2018, this was a provision that was put into the restoration plans, but no funding was allocated to it. Our project partners have worked well at bringing funds to these types of projects on the main stem. This year, we're proposing to allocate some funding to help move these projects forward along with the funding that the project partners have also brought. As far as the priority watersheds, there was this, basically, we're looking at reallocating funding in the priority watersheds. We looked at what watersheds needed more money for implementation of projects over the next 4 years, or what watersheds had allocations that they weren't going to be spending over the next 4 years. So we know at Browns Gulch, we have used up the allocation there, but there are more projects to be implemented there. So we're proposing money to be allocated to Browns Gulch. Silverboat Creek, we're proposing $500,000 to be allocated there to take over and implement the ecological work that the Greenway Service District was doing there, as well as doing a little more monitoring on the fish population. That we have not seen the robust recovery of that fish population that Fish, Wildlife and Parks and others have thought we would see. And so we do want to see if there's more restoration activity that we should be doing specifically to help with that population. Basin Creek and German Gulch, we've completed the projects in these two watersheds, and there's money sitting there that is not going to be spent. So we're proposing that to be reallocated. Orange Bridge Creek and Cottonwood Creek, same thing. There is money, or there are projects there that we can implement over the next 4 years. So we're proposing allocations there. The Little Blackfoot River, there's approximately $1.7 million in that watershed. We know we're not going to spend that in the next 4 years, so we are proposing to pull some of that funding to reallocate to other priorities. Flint Creek and Rock Creek, we have several projects that are moving forward in both of these watersheds. Our partners have significant match for these projects. And we've also noted in our monitoring that Flint Creek and Rock Creek are important recruitment tributaries to the Clark Fork River for the fishery of the Clark Fork River. So we're proposing allocation of funding there. As far as the monitoring within the Clark Fork, as many of you have heard, the Clark Fork River fishery is currently at historic lows as far as fish numbers. We are proposing to allocating money to both look at what is going on with the Clark Fork River fishery with support from Fish, Wildlife and Parks, with the main goal of determining what's the limiting factor on the fishery so that we can make a decision of where best to allocate the funding that we have. Back in 2012, the decision was made based on the information that we had, is that the best place for us to spend these restoration funds around the tributary to help restore the trout fishery of the main stem. Well, the main stem fishery is at historic lows right now after a decade of work. What we want to do is we want to evaluate that to make sure that we are spending the money where we need to be spending. Should we, if something comes up that tells us we should be reallocating it to address another limiting factor, that's something we need to know now versus, 5 or 6 years down the road when we spent more of the money on the tributary. So the main goal here is to make sure that we're doing the best thing we can for the resource. Section 5, During the solicitation, we had projects come in for, Silver Creek Greenway, the Milltown, State Park. And Powell County submitted one for a multi-county recreational corridor, as well as the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program. So we did add education to section 5. The Greenway Service District, submitted a proposal for, $3.5 million. In our revision that we put out for public comment, we proposed, $2.5 million. $500,000 would come from aquatic interest, and up to $2 million would come back, would be paid to the Greenway Service District from the parent reimbursement. The $500,000 for ecological services, the FWP and the NRDP would take that and do restoration on Silver Creek. For all recreation projects, we did require in the revision a 25% match, as well as a commitment by either the local governments or the sponsoring parties to take over the long-term operation and maintenance of those projects. The Powell County, multi-county recreational corridor.
I'm sorry, Steve Hill from Anaconda. Can we ask questions throughout this, or do you want to wait? Do you prefer to wait until the end?
I'd rather wait to the end so we actually get through it, but I'm open.
If that's okay, let's wait till the end. I mean, you're staying both with you, Steve.
So the Powell County submitted a request for a little over $200,000 to look at a multi-county trail from Orange Springs Ponds to Drummond. Our recommendation was to fund that for the roughly $200,000. Require the same thing of the Greenway Service District or all recreation projects, 25% match, and a requirement for long-term commitment to the maintenance and operation. Milltown State Park submitted a request for a little over $400,000 to work on the overlook. And if you remember the overlook, which is out there falling off, it is actually, there's a geological survey that shows that it may fall into the river. They would like to move this back. We proposed $225,000 to fund the reconstruction, the movement of that overlook back to the same location. And also to deal with the railroad tunnel, to close the railroad tunnel off that's beneath the bluff. Same requirements, 25% match and a commitment for the long-term operation and maintenance of that facility. The Clark Fork Watershed Education Program submitted an application or a request for a little over $2 million. We proposed to fund CWIP for $1 million, and this would cover 2 years of school years. We also would have them follow the same funding contingencies that they currently do in their current contract, which is a 25% matching funds, and their budget be considered by the advisory council and the natural resource damage program, and approved by the trustee restoration council on even number of years. Section 6, which is the last section of the restoration plan, this is the implementation section. We had a few modifications here, or a few revisions. 2 of them had to do with matching funds. The first is that we would propose that all projects that are coming in front of or that are proposing to use restoration funds be required to seek matching funds, whether they're priority projects or not. But the first bullet is to require all the aquatic and terrestrial projects to seek matching funds. The second bullet is to require the recreation dominant projects to seek 25% or have 25% match to the projects that they are being funded. And these would be with non-natural resource damage program restoration funds. We also had to require the project sponsors and partners to provide a commitment to maintain these recreational features into the future with non-restoration funds. The last revision that we had proposed was that we would revise this update 4 years from the date of approval. So the governor approved it the end of this year, it would be in 2027 that we would start this revision process again. As far as the allocations that we're working off of, we're using $4 million of aquatic interest. That is approved since the last revision. That one slide I had up there of the watersheds where we were allocating funds or taking some funds away from some watersheds. This is the reallocation of some of those funds to other priority resources. But we also have, in 2024, we will have money coming back from the Parrot project. We don't know exactly how much right now, but the Parrot project reimbursement, the Parrot project is done. You'll hear a presentation about that at your next meeting. But for the most part, it's done. Once we know exactly how much is left in that fund, those dollars are required to come back to the restoration fund. And they are streamside tailing dollars. So they have a specific area of use, which is from Cottonwood Creek here in Deer Lodge, north to the headwaters. And those funds can only be used for resources in that, priority resources in that area. So we know those funds are coming back. We don't know exactly how much, but we have allocated those on a percentage basis in our draft revision that went out for public comment. So we did submit this for public comment. It was out for public comment during your last, during the last meeting. That comment period closed on the 19th. It was available, or they're still available, on our website. And today I will go over the response to comments. As I said, the response to comments, we had a very productive response to comments. We had 105 letters that were submitted. 4 of those were late, and we did not address those 4 late ones. Many of the comment letters had numerous comments. So we had 101 comment letters that we considered, but I would suspect there is 150 or more comments total, because many of them had more than one. Brief breakdown, the aquatic section, there were 12 comments, letters. The terrestrial section had 1 comment letter. The recreation and education, that's where most of the comments and letters are from. Milltown State Park had 9. The Greenway Service District had 20 letters with multiple comments within them. The Clark Fork Watershed Education Program had a grand total of 61 support letters that were submitted. So we will go through most of these letters in the following slides. And then section 6, there is 1 comment letter on matching funds. In the first 2 sections, section 1 and 2, the introductions, and I'm going to go through this by section as well. There were no comments on our revisions to sections 1 and 2, so we are proposing that the revisions that we had that we put out for public comment, we would accept and recommend move forward. As I said, most of these were administrative updates anyways. In section 3, and I will note, as I said before, I'm not hitting all of the comments. If you look to the responsiveness summary, there are many comments here that I'm not going to talk about specifically. In section 3, for the flow process, there were 2 comments that supported the flow revision. They provided, or they talked about it would increase the flexibility of implementing flow projects. And there is a need for multiple tools to get there. As I said before, when we started this flow process, we were looking at 1 tool, and that was acquisitions. And we graduated there. We've learned that we need to add many more tools to the toolbox. NRDP will continue to work with our partners, and we support this revision. And it is our recommendation that the language that we propose move forward. There were 3 comments of general support for evaluating the fisheries in the upper Clark Fork. We agreed with this, and as I said before, I do believe that determining the cause of this decline in the trout population upstream of Deer Lodge is critical for us to guide future restoration efforts to ensure that we're spending the money where we're going to see the biggest benefit for the money that we have. As far as the watershed allocation, there was general support for the allocation. specifically Rock Creek and Flint Creek got support letters. There was one comment letter, that said that we should focus on the more heavily damaged areas, i.e. Warm Springs Creek, Boss Creek, and Willow Creek. Our response is that we do have monitoring data that shows that Flint Creek and Rock Creek are very important, for significant recruitment to all reaches of the Clark Fork River. They're seeing fish up in the, up near Deer Lodge that are coming out of Flint Creek. The fish coming out of Rock Creek, are, you know, throughout reaches B and C, from Garrison to Milltown. The other watershed allocations, the process that we went through to look at these allocations is we worked with our partners and with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, looking at the projects that we had in each of the watersheds and looking at whether additional funding was needed there to implement those projects during the next 4 years. It was determined that Warm Springs Creek and Cottonwood Creek and Browns Gulch all needed a boost of money. So we did provide or did propose that we would allocate funding there. The comment that, you know, some more money should be allocated to Mill Creek. We do believe that the allocation that currently exists in Mill Creek is enough to complete the projects that are implementable in the next 4 years there. And Lost Creek has been identified as a flow limiting stream, and right now there's no funding that's been allocated there until that flow issue gets addressed on Lost Creek. So we are proposing to stay with the allocations that we had proposed. The main stem diversions, there were support letters to work on fish passage, fish entrainment, and other in recreational passage on the main stem of the Clark Fork, along with the partners match that they are providing. There was also 3 comments that suggested that we integrate more with these funds more with the remediation and restoration that DEQ and NRDP are implementing on the Clark Fork River main stem. That is a specific comment to the Clark Fork River operable unit. We do believe that the funds are available there to address that, and the funds within this, the upper Clark Fork we're short on those funds anyway, so we do believe that the current allocation, the way things are split up between these 2 areas is working. The Terrestrial Fish, Wildlife, and Parks did submit one comment letter on the Terrestrial in support of the restoration plan that we have out there for land acquisitions, conservation easements, wildlife habitat restoration, monitoring, and public access. There was a support letter basically, and there's no revisions to the Terrestrial that was proposed. For the Milltown State Park, we did receive 9 support letters for the funding of $225,000 to implement the actions that were proposed there. We do not propose any changes there. We propose our recommendation is to continue that and to carry that forward. The Greenway Service District, multiple comments were submitted in multiple letters, in the 26 letters that were submitted for the Greenway Service District. 21 of those letters specifically supported the Greenway Service District getting their requested funding amount of approximately $3.5 million. Our response is that NRDP still proposes to fund the Greenway Service District for $2.5 million, and this would be for the construction of the 2 trail sections that they are proposing. Of that money, $500,000 or $500,000 of that would come from the aquatic interest. The remaining 80% or the remaining $2 million would come from the parent reimbursement, or 80% of that. We are proposing a modification to this recommendation here based on the money coming back from the parent. There may not be $2 million available to fund the Greenway Service District coming back from the parent. So what our recommendation is that the Greenway Service District would still get 80% of the funding that, would be coming back from the parent after, on the percentage basis that's explained in the response to comments. But if it doesn't equal the $2.5 million, we would, NRDP, working with the other stakeholders and our partners, would look at the other, aquatic and terrestrial allocations, determine where some of that money may not be spent in the next 4 years, and provide the funding to the Greenway Service District. And the language that we would propose is that, if the funds are not available from the parent project, the state revised proposal is to use funds allocated from aquatic and terrestrial resources to ensure the Greenway Service District receives up to $2.5 million for the construction of those 2 trail segments, or the cost of those the cost of that construction of these 2 sections, whichever is less. Didn't read that per se, but basically, we would make sure that the Greenway Service District was funded up to $2.5 million, or for the construction of those 2 trail segments. The response to comments does go on to further state that where that money is taken from the aquatic and terrestrial resources, would be the first resources that would be reimbursed during the next revision, using the interest that will be available in 4 years from now. So the priority resources that this money would come from would be the first ones up for consideration to get reimbursed. One of the other comments that was made on the Greenway Service District, as I said, there were several, but this is one that we felt we should highlight. It did note that the comment stated that Butte was ineligible for any restoration funding until the consent decrees were completed in 2008. As a result, Butte-Silverville County or Butte-Silverville spent 20 years without funding. As I know many people know, this is not a correct statement, and we do want to clarify this and correct it. There were 3 areas that were not eligible for funding during the grants program. The Butte Area 1, which is the Butte-Silverville, or the Silverville Creek corridor through Butte. The Clark River itself is right here, and the Anaconda Uplands. They weren't eligible for funding during the grants program because those remedies were not known, the consent decrees and the records of decision were not issued on those. So we did not want to do restoration actions there and have those be undone by remedy or be ahead of remedy. In the meantime, during the grants program from 2001 to 2011, approximately $89 million was allocated to Butte-Silverville County for restoration activities. In total, Butte-Silverville County has received almost $140 million, or been allocated 140. So did want to clarify this statement because that, to us, that's important, that there is a lot of money that has gone to Butte-Silverville County.
I have one comment. That's
Hang on a second, we're gonna take some questions. Go ahead, Doug.
The Clark Watershed Education Program, as I noted previously, 61 comments of support were sent in for supporting the Clark Watershed Education Program, and we do propose to recommend the funding of $1 million for the Clark Watershed Education Program. Section 6, there was one comment received. It was in support of the matching funds based on the fact that there are limited resources and the needs in the basin exceed the funds, the settlement funds that remain. In developing strategies with partners that leverage outside investment on the recovery of the Clark Fork River Basin will help ensure that the natural resource damage funds have a maximum impact on the ground. We do agree with this, and as I said, we are proposing to require the 25% match for recreation dominant projects and require all the aquatic and terrestrial priority projects for the natural resource damage program, as well as our partners to seek matching funds on all of those projects. So with that, our recommendation, and this kind of gets your things, Steve, is that the natural resource damage program recommends the proposed 2023 revisions in funding allocations to the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Aquatic and Terrestrial Resource Restoration Plans as revised by our draft response to comments. And in the response to comments, we did propose to change the allocation of funding for the Greenway Service District. And that was the only change that we were proposing from the draft that went to public comment. And, you know, based on public comment, we changed the Greenway Service District funding allocation.
Ready? Okay,
And now we're ready for vote.
so open it up for advisory council questions and comments. Steve?
Sorry.
Steve Hill?
Yeah, Steve Hill from Anaconda. In section 6, the fish passage. As I understand it, I'm probably wrong. That was primarily to prevent fish from going into artificial diversions from some of the waterways. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't know, the working on the main stem diversion.
Yeah.
Yes, so there is, it's for, to improve fish passage and decrease fish entrainment. Yeah, so decreasing fish entrainment into those diversions.
Okay. Okay, to the flow on some of the watershed rivers. You know, Flint Creek and Rock Creek. Rock Creek's one of the best fishery fund.
It is.
It's superb. Flint Creek is improving a lot. And so each of those, I mean, they get Rock Creek, it says 600,000, Flint Creek, 500,000. Warm Springs is struggling. There's been nothing done as far as remediation, or very little done as far as remediation, and especially the geomorphology of Warm Springs from Anaconda down to Main Center. But I get $200,000. One, what's the $200,000? What's that project? And then second, what's the allocation? Or what's the money that's available for Warm Springs?
So so what we did, let me start, Mark. So what we did, Steve, is we looked at the existing money in the watersheds, and looked at what additional funding was needed. So in Warm Springs Creek, my glasses on here. Warm Springs Creek was originally allocated $1.6 million. There is approximately $1.3 million in that allocation. We're working with our partners, Charlie Limited and others. They are actively working, there's supposed to be a bid document going out.
Within a week.
Within a week.
Could you please announce your name?
Sorry, Ray Vinke, Natural Resource Damage Program.
Sorry, I looked at Ray and I cited. So there is work actually, actively going on. One of our other proposals, in the revision is to actually, so when we first started working on Warm Springs Creek back in 2012, the projects were identified, were the priority projects that the Fish, Wildlife and Parks Fisheries Manager had identified as the highest priority projects. As we get done with those, this next year, what we have proposed, and it came to a comment from Trout Unlimited, is that we do a watershed assessment of Warm Springs Creek to identify the next number of projects. We do feel that the $1.5 million that would be in Warm Springs Creek is adequate to do those projects.
So the 200,000 is assessment.
The $200,000 is additional funding. It could be for assessment, it could be for a project on the ground.
Okay, so, okay, so what's the, for instance, what's the 600,000 for Rock Creek?
Good question. So one of the easiest ways to do a restoration project is to actually work on a very good existing, resource. So if the rock, as you said, Rock Creek is a very good, trout fishery. It's very important trout fishery to the Clark Fork River. And maintaining that is easier and less expensive than, bringing a degraded stream to the level that it is. So a lot of the funds there are going to maintain, the resource, working on fish screens and fish passage to assist fish, and improve the fishery. But it's easier to do it, not that, in total, Rock Creek has been allocated, that there was $600,000 previously allocated. Most of that has been spent on projects. So that's why there was a request for additional funding to work on additional projects.
But primarily maintenance.
Maintenance or just improving the resource there. I don't know, Caleb with Fish and Wildlife and Parks is here. If he has anything to say on the Rock Creek fishery, let him talk about that.
And if you do, please come to the microphone.
He's at the table.
Caleb Erling with Fish and Wildlife and Parks. Yeah, I guess all of the data that we collected through time on all of the various tributaries, Rock Creek, Blink Creek, and all of the upper watershed tributaries has kind of continually shown the importance of all of the tributaries to the main stem fisheries. So, Rock Creek.
Fish recruitment.
Yeah, fish recruitment, fish coming from the river to spawn and fish returning. So, we're seeing those fish even from Flint Creek as far up as Reach A, Reach B and C as well. Same with Rock Creek. And so our data just continually suggests that we need all of the tributaries, kind of look at the holistic picture with all of the tributaries to meet the recovery goals. So, yeah, that's our data suggests we're seeing benefits from all of the tributaries.
Any other council members with questions or comments? Mick?
Mick Ringside from you. I'd like to piggyback on what Steve said. Neither Rocky Creek nor Flint Creek are in the injured areas at all. Zero, nothing to do with nowhere, no how. We got a limited amount of money, and I think that we ought to restrict the hunter spending into the injured areas, particularly until we've got an economy in really good shape and the rivers in the injured area. I think we need to focus and spend our money there. Rock Creek is a great fishery. There's work to be done. You got Trout Unlimited, you got all kinds of other agencies that put money in these kinds of things. And I think it is wrong to take money from this settlement and spend it in an area that is not in the injured area. Where I'm at.
Any other questions from council? Steve Hill?
And thank you, Ryan. Steve Hill from Anaconda. This, Milltown. When we first reviewed that proposal, I even commented, I said, I don't think it's our place. In particular, I think I did this remotely. In particular, we shouldn't be funding operational issues on parks. Second, I don't think we should be funding any of it, frankly. Parks, they get $9 from every vehicle registration to support state parks. They get $8 for day use of non-residents, and $4 from a day use of residents without Montana permit holder. I think maybe I'm wrong, but this smells like this was an opportunity and not a need. And I oppose funding the Milltown redo and especially the operational part of it.
Mick Ringside from you, I would more than second, I think, because I was gonna say the same thing. I think it's inappropriate use of funds.
Christy Beal, was there a component of the Milltown Dam request that was for operations? and another component for reworking that, the portion of the outlook that's collapsing.
Yes, this is Doug. Their initial request was for $400,000. The $225,000 would be just for the implementation of the mitigation project or the construction project to relocate the dam and to work on the tunnel. The other $175,000 was for other services, administrative and operation and maintenance.
So just point of clarification, you said to relocate the dam, you need to relocate. Yeah,
The old one, I'm sorry, the dam was relocated a long time ago.
spent a lot more than that on that. I have, Christy Beal, I have a question. In your watershed funding reallocation slide, I know it's a ways back, but I was trying to do some quick math there. The watersheds that had a minus in front of them, that dollar figure was less, the minus dollar figure total was less than the watersheds that were receiving a positive allocation. Is the difference between those the amount of the allocation that's gonna happen plus matching funds?
No, what we did is, we evaluated each of the watersheds and determined whether there's money needed or not. The rest of the money going to, for instance, Cottonwood Creek, Flint Creek, Rock Creek, Browns Gulch, and Orange Creek would come either from aquatic interest or the Silverbill Creek, the return from the parent. So for instance, Browns Gulch, that money, the money we propose to go to Browns Gulch will be money coming back to the parent.
Okay, understood.
So that's why, yes, the negatives don't equal the pluses there because this might be a better slide to show you. It's this right here, Christie. So,
Okay,
the 400,000 or $4 million of interest, you know.
understood, okay. I have another question, still Christy Beal. The section 4 slide about terrestrial, benefits that you had up there. A general question, not necessarily about the funding and what we're talking about today, but I'm going back to Maggie's question about split season leases and whether or not those would be potential projects if they didn't benefit flow. If they benefited, if there was a terrestrial benefit, I don't know if a split season lease would create a terrestrial benefit, but if there was, is that one option for what Maggie was talking about?
I think we would have to take that on a case by case basis and look at it because for instance, if you were doing something like that into a tributary, that there might not be a huge flow benefit, but that additional water would be a benefit to that riparian area. All riparian areas within the upper basin are considered priority 1 in the terrestrial. So something like that could benefit. So if you have some ideas, Maggie, we can talk about that. So but that's a good point.
I have a third question. What are we doing to look at, well, the Greenway Services District funding is somewhat tied or is tied to the cost of building those 2 trails. Construction costs. As a construction lawyer, I know that that's kind of a fuzzy phrase. Who's looking at what equals construction costs?
So, we worked with the Greenway Service District when they submitted their proposal. They've done these over the years, the grants process as well. So they provided us what the construction costs are, and, you know, for using an engineer's estimate, and they built a lot of trail there, so they had that pretty well dialed in. You know, how much cost, what a linear foot of trail cost, if there's a bridge, what that bridge goes into. Also the engineering, costs were included in those, in the construction costs, the design, engineering and construction.
Okay, so it's design and construction costs. And that, again, this is Christie Beal, that, but we're basing what's being allocated to them. It's the lesser of 2.5 or whatever it costs to build those two trails. I guess what I'm wondering is how do we, the design and construction costs of building those two trails, I understand there's an estimate that somebody's working from, but how is the NRDP going to figure out what is the actual cost of designing and constructing those two trails?
So the design will be what those design costs are from the engineer. The construction cost would be so the Greenway Service District, would put that out for bid, and actually they're here, and we could ask them as well. But for instance, the last, trail, project that they put out, the bids came in below the engineer's estimate. So the construction costs for that phase are going to be less than had been estimated. So we have engineers' estimates, what will be these, and that's where the 2.5, has come from those engineers' estimate of what it will cost to construct these two trails. But if the bids actually come in lower than that, that's what we would propose to pay.
But my point is, you have an engineer's estimate. When you get bids, you have contractors' estimates.
Right.
I'm talking about actual construction costs. Who's watching that? Who is making sure the NRDP isn't paying somebody's estimate versus what it actually costs?
So we do it on a reimbursement basis. So when the Greenway Service District, we have a contract with the Greenway Service District. And when they put a bid out on the street and they get, contractor X to build their section of the trail, they have to submit their invoices to us that they get from that contractor that we will pay.
Okay,
So we're not paying them their engineer's estimate, we're paying them their actual contractors,
the actual payouts, okay. That's what I was wondering. If we're paying on estimates or are we paying on actual costs?
We're paying on actual costs.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anybody here that knows is there a contractor selected and is there a contractor's fee that's being agreed to at this point?
The two reaches of the trail that we're proposing to fund now have not been put out for bid. And actually I would go to the Greenway Service District and ask one of their representatives to come to the mic, to come to the podium and clarify anything that I just spoke on here.
Thanks, Doug. Dory Skirkrud, project manager for the Silverbow Creek Greenway, members of the council. Doug's right. We do, for the purposes of grant applications, have an engineer's estimate, and that's based on their previous experience, industry standards, current issues related to materials and construction, and those kinds of things. We follow the state's procurement law, and so we have to put them out for bid and receive bids and then contract with the successful bidder. We rely on our engineers to go through a very discreet and deliberate bid summary. I mean, to the extent that we actually go down to unit prices. So our engineers go through a very serious evaluation process to ground truth that. We want to make sure that they've done all their math correctly, go through that process. They make a recommendation to the Greenway Service District Board. Based on that recommendation, the board would award the contract to whomever the successful bidder is. That's a contract with the Greenway Service District. We're acting on behalf of Anaconda Deer Lodge and Silverbow County. We manage that contract. Our engineers also provide oversight. They do QA, QC, so they confirm quantities for submittals for reimbursement from our contractor. So when the contractor submits a bid, and it could be his bid, it could be a subcontractor's bid. When that documentation comes in, our engineers do an evaluation to make certain that the numbers are correct from what they've seen in the field and submit that payment request to the Greenway Service District for payment. We manage those payments through the city and county of Butte Silver Bow because we have the capacity of that. Some auditing requirements and things like that. Probably more of a burden on a smaller county than Anaconda, Deer Lodge. So Butte Silver Bow makes those payments. We put together on a quarterly basis the summary of the expenses for the quarter, along with a quarterly report, submit that to the Natural Resource Damage Program with an accounts receivable, a billing from Butte Silver Bow, and then we are reimbursed for those amounts.
So you have an engineer, this is Christy Beal, sorry. You have an engineer who is looking at each of the payment applications from the contractor?
Absolutely. I mean, we have oversight in the field. So they do, I mean, they verify quantities, if it's quantities of gravel or quantities of asphalt, do QA/QC testing to make certain that the materials meet our specifications. And it's a very deliberate process to get a good product for the community. Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
Steve Hill, Anaconda.
Yes.
Are all the land issues solved
No,
on the remainder?
they are not.
Okay. So you can't, in some cases, in some stretches, you can't start construction until those are solved. And what's the risk of financial impact if that gets delayed?
Again, I mean, as we've experienced throughout the course of this project, time has been our enemy in terms of the value of those dollars and not accruing interest on that money. There are two segments. We've been working with the Department of Environmental Quality. They've been working with the Natural Resource Damage Program. This is the last acreage that has to be transferred to meet the provisions of the record of decision for Atlantic Richfield Company to convey $1 million worth of property to the state of Montana. The property north of Highway 1 has not been transferred. So the Opportunity Pasture area even up beyond Stewart Street. And there's a portion just west of the Port of Montana that is still unresolved. Now we have a conversation on a regular basis about encouraging those transfers to take place. We're waiting. So again, this has been the challenge of the project, not only for having access to the property that the state acquired, although we have a very seamless relationship in terms of access easements and things like that. There were also properties that we worked for 15 years to purchase. So yeah, I mean, again, those challenges are the time value of money, just the length of time it takes to do that. And as we've expressed in the past, that concern about time and the impacts has brought us to the situation where we don't have enough funding.
So you have the approvals from landowners. It's just the transfers that are being delayed.
Ultimately, the private landowner, Atlantic Richfield Company, will transfer this property to the Natural Resource Damage Program. It's held by the Department of Environmental Quality. That is the only landowner we have to deal with. Everything else we've secured. Either it's owned by DEQ or the Greenway Service District has purchased the land, purchased an easement, secured access, those kinds of things. So those two, it really involves one landowner.
Okay. What's the cause of the delay? Mediation?
No, no, I mean, I think it's a function of, access to legal staff. I think it's been a problem. The property located, outside of or west of the Port of Montana has some unresolved issues related to some materials that are still on the property. I mean, straight out of the chutes, immediately after the record decision, a lot of property moved over really, really quickly, and these parcels were the ones that weren't. One involves, they actually both involve surveying requirements that have taken place. They're prepared and ready to be transferred, you know, as a particular parcel. But it's probably not the most important thing on Atlantic Richfield's list to do the transfer. We have contact with their land folks, ask them questions. We have the most up-to-date information from them. We speak to the DEQ, their lawyers, and it's a staff time issue, I think.
So this is Doug. I do know that section 26, that's the section, is it section 26?
Parcel 26.
Parcel 26.
Well, yeah,
West of Rocker, that they are working out the resolution to that. There's some contamination associated with that that's on that parcel that is also from Rome Fall Land. So it's separate contamination that was associated with Silver Creek, the metals contamination. But what I have heard, and I know Katie Borba is on the line, and if with DEQ, if she from the AC, if she wanted to speak up, she could. But what I have heard is that they are working out an agreement with Atlantic Richfield at that time to address that. Atlantic Richfield is actually possibly gonna keep part of it. I saw Mr. Archibald raise his hand. I'm not sure he has more information to raise, but some of those issues are being resolved. So we are getting through those. I do concur with Dory that it has taken a long time to get through some of those, but I think we're making progress on at least parcel 26.
Thanks for.
thanks, Steve.
Mick Ringside, you have a question. Do you have any usage numbers on the trail? You keep usage track, and the reason I ask you that is section between Ramsey and Silver Bowl, take my dogs to once in a while. Over 3 years, I've run into 4 people in the creek.
We don't have an accurate count or an efficient way of counting users on the trail. Your anecdote differs from anecdotes that I hear from other people. The last time I was on the trail, I encountered probably a dozen people and people in wheelchairs. So I think it kind of depends upon the location. Mick, you're right.
The very first reach that's used, a little more reach between Silver Bowl and Ramsey. Doesn't have hardly anybody.
It's probably my favorite reach, but
It's the best reach to walk. Oh,
there, because there's nobody there, Mick. That's all right.
Yeah,
I apologize. I didn't mean to be mean-spirited in that light.
This is Brad Archibald of Pioneer Technical Services, a consultant to the Greenway Service District. Just to make sure everyone understands the section that Dory was, or she just said was true. But the section she was just talking about with parcel 26 with those access difficulties, those are not part of the current grant application. That is a future project that we need to complete the trail in its entirety. All the access necessary for the projects that are in front of you with this grant application are secured. We're good to go.
You go in a comment. So there's a section that's still, the land acquisition is still questionable. It's not included in the 2.5 million.
That is correct. Brad Archibald against answering. That is correct.
Dory. Again, Dory screwed up. Brad, I apologize. I'm gonna amend his comments. As Doug mentioned, this parcel 26 has some waste-related issues that have been complicated. The area from Highway 1 north up to and past Stewart Street is also subject to, or we're still waiting for that transfer. The last time I spoke to John Morgan, he expected that transfer to be by the end of late summer. That is project number 2 in this grant request. So when we tried to look at the last 4 segments, we knew parcel 26 had these issues. Hopefully, we're going to see that move forward. The opportunity, the Panadera Lodge parcels, we had gotten every indication that that transfer was gonna happen sooner than later. So that's why the Durant Canyon project is project number one, and the opportunity is project number two. So we've got, you know, it would be a 2025 project. We've got that period of time. Our anticipation is, even though it's been taken a long time, there was gonna be enough time for that to be resolved.
Do we have any other questions from council or comments? Go ahead.
Can we ask for or recommend an amendment to any of this?
Yeah, we will, Nick, we're in the question, just the question period now. We haven't got to the motion yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Steve Hill.
Sorry, I keep belaboring this, but I just, and I understand how you want to try to maintain Rock Creek and Flint Creek, because it is important to fishery in any extent. But so little being done on Warm Spring. It just confuses me. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done, as far as flow can be improved, the geomorphology of the stream can be improved, and none of that's been done. And none of it's gonna be done with this until, I guess, the assessment is done. So, anyway. I personally, I don't understand it.
Okay, we can talk about more, this is Doug, we can talk more about more of that during the project, during the next meeting, when we talk about project updates and what we're working on there in each of those projects.
Billy Kolaski.
Billy Klasky, Granite County, and I'm very much in favor of supporting Rock Creek and Flint Creek. Obviously, it's in Granite County, and I think it speaks to the restoration, as was stated earlier. The fishery in the main stem of the Clark Fork is at an all-time low. Fish, Wildlife and Park noted that the Rock Creek and Flint Creek are pivotal to increasing that. And I think the maintenance is important, so I just wanted to state that.
Mike Pfaffhausen out of Butte. I think one of the concerns is recreational equity to the communities that are nearby, the economic benefits from recreation. And whereas our kids are supposed to be able to go fly fish somewhere in the upper Clark Fork, and we're forced to go to a different watershed, a different side of the Continental Divide to fish. We have to fish on the East Slope, on the Big Hole, on the Big Hole River. And much like the Big Hole, I don't think that Flint Creek or Rock Creek are an injured stream. They are wonderful streams. They should be protected. They should be maintained and cared for. I fish them myself. I would prefer to go fish Browns Gulch with my kids, or Warm Springs Creek, or any of the other upper tributaries that were injured. And I don't look at it like wetlands credits, like just a unit of recreational benefit in the broader spectrum doesn't create equity for the economic output for each region. So I do have similar concerns about what will happen to Butte and Anaconda and Deer Lodge if all of our money is expended in Flint Creek and we have more fly fishermen from Missoula enjoying the benefits of recreating on those rivers, and that are wonderful rivers as they stand right now and did not receive injury. The settlement had nothing to do with those rivers. And so that's the first point. I also have concerns about Milltown. This council did express its concerns about Milltown in numerous fashions about the overlook. This is not a do-over fund. This is a restoration fund. Somebody has to be responsible for this. Before our fund is tapped into, I would like to see FWP approach their engineers and others that participated in the design and the placement of that overlook, and see if there is an ability for funds to be collected from other sources than us, or at least that's been proven to be exhausted. It's concerning to me that we would be looked at as a do-over fund for any form of state park or recreational benefit as well. And it has nothing to do with proximity to Missoula. If this was anywhere, there's other people besides us that could be responsible beforehand. I think it's a necessary due diligence point. Public comment, gold medal goes to CFWEP, 61 comments, great job. And thank you for all your guys' efforts to do that as well. But that's all I had, was trying to understand too our role in this, Doug, as a council. I don't know if it's appropriate for us to be writing in for public comment as being that we're on this council, but it doesn't appear that our comments and concerns were integrated into this provision in any way. And I may be mistaken in that, but you can advise us on how we best provide our worries and concerns to you outside of reading a pre-typed thing on the screen about us accepting everything in the plan.
So this is the natural resource, this is our recommendation, Mike. This is the council's opportunity at this meeting to make a recommendation to the trustee council and the governor, what your thoughts are on this, basically coming from, your constituents and the public. So, this is your chance to make, your recommendation. So I would say this is the time, so when we met last, the document was already out for public comment. And so this is your time to listen to the public comment, review the comments that came in, and then provide your recommendations. This is ours. There's another slide for us to change, much like the presentation that Brian put up, where when you guys make a motion, we can edit this. So this would be the advisory council's recommendation that we will provide, or that Christie will provide to the trustee restoration council in the.
Hang on, before we go there to the proposed motion though,
Are we gonna?
I think, this is Christy Beal. What I want to do is finish with the council's input, questions, comments. Then I would like to open it to public comment and questions. Let me make sure I'm doing this in the wrap up. And then I would like to take our break, and I would like council members to pee quickly, because we need to talk about revising the proposed motion. And how we do that. We break it down per section and do a proposed motion per section, or how we do that. Instead of doing it all in one. And that's just my idea I just came up with. Y'all might have more ideas. We'll talk about as soon as we all take our lunch break. I would ask the public, no matter how bad you have to go to the bathroom, please let the council go first. Because we're all gonna be expected out here in a few minutes while you all take your break. So is there any more, and this is just my idea, council members who may have way better ideas. Any other questions or comments from the council before we open up for public? Marjorie
Christensen. I want to say I support what Steve, Mick, and Mike said. So that's where I stand.
Steve?
I just have one comment, and Billy, I'm not suggesting that money be taken from Dog Creek and Flint Creek to Warm Springs. What I'm just showing is the contrast between the fishery and a priority one stream. So.
Other questions, comments from the council? All right, hearing none at this time. I'm going to move to questions and comments from the public on what's been presented.
Raylene Brandel with the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program. Chairperson Beal, esteemed council members, thank you for considering our grant proposal or our proposal to the fund. I would like to say we are very appreciative of the allocation that's being recommended by staff. And I want to qualify that to say that we did ask for what we need. So we weren't overinflating and asking for more just to get more, but we were asking for what we need based on that strategic plan I presented to you. And I believe in our comments, people had recommended that we be funded for the full amount we had requested as well. We also apparently missed a few letters. And so I apologize to those people. We had 4 more, so there's 65 that were in there. So, but thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration of our proposal.
Darn, he breaks, so he's good. I'm Ted Dodge. I'm the executive director of the Watershed Restoration Coalition here in Deer Lodge. First of all, thank you folks for considering the Browns Club's proposal and your work and the time you take to do this as a native deer lodge. And I had a chance to come back and work up here because of your folks, and I appreciate that. We strongly support the need for cost share. And we continue to go after it. Right now, we have, with the $200,000 that we've asked for in Browns, or have been approved in Browns, we're already spending $100,000 in cost share on 4 diversions up there right now. And we anticipate going after more to make that $200,000 reach. So then the next case is, we do oppose taking aquatic and terrestrial money off for the Greenway. The reason we're after cost share all the time is all of us know there's not enough resources to finish this job. And working ag lands where the wildlife is, and where, if we want to connect the tributaries to the Clark Fork, we have to make sure it gets done, or we don't have a complete watershed restoration. That being said, we are also, last year we visited every project and monitored everything we've done since 2013. And we reported that back in a document to NRDP. Last week, we delivered a monitoring proposal to Ray Vinke for our repairing area work on how we will monitor whether or not what we've done works. We also know that when we work on terrestrial projects, we require access for hunting access for folks. We know the easements for that come out of terrestrial are providing a lot of recreation opportunity as well. And we do think it's a fair question that, and Mick brought it up, do we know the user, the recreation user use on the Greenway? We believe that there should be a recreation user survey done, or monitoring going on, to know what we're getting out of it before you do talk about putting other money into it. And I guess that's where we're at. I hate to be raining on the parade. We like what you guys do, but that's where we stand. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you for your input. This is Christy Beal. Is there any additional public input or questions? Bless you.
Thank you. Members of the council, again, my name is Dory Skirgert. I'm the project manager for the Silverbow Creek Greenway. I do have a couple of questions. The first question is, would the advisory council be willing to amend the Aquatic Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plan revision to restore the ranking of the Silverbow Creek Greenway as a special project, as it was declared by the trustee in 2012? The second question. Under your consideration, it is a 25% match. Is the advisory council willing to eliminate this requirement by recognizing the Silverbow Creek Greenway as a special project? If the advisory council is unwilling to eliminate the match requirement, would the advisory council consider the accrued match of over $2 million that the Greenway Service District has secured to date as satisfying this match requirement? So that would be that from the year 2000, and that is documented. This would allow the Greenway Service District to proceed with the correct construction of Project 1 in 2024. If not, we may not be able to secure new matching funds before the 2024 construction season. Therefore, again, the purchasing power of the amount granted will be diminished by inflation, which will continue to happen until new matching funds are secured. Also, there is no guarantee that these funds can be secured. To burden the Greenway Service District, or to burden the Silverbow Creek Greenway with this match requirement could result in a failure to complete the project. As partners, the Natural Resource Damage Program, the Department of Environmental Quality, and the Greenway Service District should recognize this project for all its successes and its critical role in protecting and enhancing the remedy and restored resources. And we should all work together to get to 100% completion.
This is Christy Beal. When you say work together, can you tell me what the Greenway Services District has done since it first made its initial request for funding from here to obtain any matching funds, and how much you've obtained?
We have, in our original reach, I don't have my breakdown with me, I wish I had. We matched our first reach with CTEP funding, that was Community Transportation Enhancement funding.
Is that the request on this request, or are you going back to 2000?
I'm going back to 2000.
Let's work from the request you made of this council.
I have made application for 2 grants for matching funds. I just was advised today that I did not secure the first grant application I have made. I mean, we're talking about if the question is, we have accrued $2 million of matching funds against the grant itself, against the project,
I
right?
understand. This is Christy Beal. It was my question. So the question is, what efforts has the Greenway Service District made since it first came here? What was the original request on this funding allocation?
The revised one was 3.5,
What was the original?
9.
When you first came on this allocation request and asked for $9 million, since that date, what efforts have you made to obtain any matching funds? And I do need to correct you from earlier. You said that it's burdening the Greenway Service District. I will remind you that all recreational requests have been asked to share that burden and to work together as you suggested to the 25%. What efforts has the Greenway Service District made to do any matching since it made its $9 million request?
We have submitted 2 grant applications. We were denied the first one, actually 3. Sent one into the FWP that was actually prior to the 9.25 million for a match to the bridge in our next project 1 construction. We did not get that from FWP.
Okay,
We have 2 more grants in the hopper that we're waiting for.
okay. Other than those 3 grant requests, what have you done to obtain the matching funds?
Applied for grants.
Those 3? you're
Yes.
talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you help me with what you would advise this council to say to others in the public who are concerned about the ability to allocate proper funding to aquatic and terrestrial resources? And if we were to say, let's take funding away from those folks and give it to build these trails, how would you help us explain that to those folks who would not be getting funding for the aquatic and terrestrial resources that have been damaged?
The project request that you have before you is the same project request that we made in 9 grant applications from the year 2000 to 2012. This is not a different project. The access features were considered to be integral to the whole objective of meeting the measure of the rod to create a recreational corridor, because the Superfund cleanup is only to recreation standards. There are management requirements that are going to have to be put in place, and we've discussed those. This has never been categorized as a recreational project. We have never been required to provide a 25% match in the history of the $23.6 million granted from the NRD.
I understand that, and I understand there is a significant amount that has been granted previously. And I'm sure you understand that there are financial restrictions that are different this year from others. And I'm also certain that you understand that there is a greater recreational component to your ask this year than previous.
Dory Scrupid again. There is not a greater recreational component in this grant application. The access features are the same access features that were requested and covered in the grant and designed in our 1998 preliminary plan. We have not increased recreational features. In fact, at the advice of the Natural Resource Damage Program, we amended our request the $9+ million to a more reasonable number because we knew that the natural resource damage program would not have that money for us and anybody else. And at that time, we made a concerted effort to skinny down, to reduce those recreation features at the request of the natural resource damage program. There is no more requests for any additional recreational features. If anything, it's less. These features have been part and parcel of this project since the beginning. It has been reflected in all our grant applications. Every single grant application has a long-term, has those different phases, where those alignments are, what our goals have had to be when we have to purchase property or purchase an easement. I cannot stress enough to you, we're not asking for more money. We've not added additional recreational features to this project. This special project in 2012 was recognized for that integration. That's aside from the $7 million that our grant application contributed to the restoration activities in the corridor. $300,000 to the Fishberry and German Gulch, $3 million to remove additional tailings in the Ramsey Flats area. This project is so intertwined with remedy and restoration that it shouldn't be pulled apart and it shouldn't be set forth as different this year. It's not different. There's no difference to this project. We are trying to cut corners. We are trying to reduce the expenses associated with developments at the advice and request of the Natural Resource Damage Program, eliminating paving, eliminating parking, eliminating costly trailhead investments. When I made my presentation to you for the 3.4 million, we showed you what we intended to do. Again, we are working with an engineer's estimate. This is our best evaluation. We struck things from our application to put in a reasonable request, move this project forward and get it done.
So this is Doug Martin. I'd like to address a couple of things, and there may be a difference of opinion on the characterization of the special project. There were three special in 2012, when we developed the restoration plans. There was a long-range plan, the final process plan, and then the terrestrial, aquatic and terrestrial plan. The council had a big role in all of those. The section that dealt with the special projects, there were three special projects, or three special things that were identified. The transfer of money from the streamside tailings operable unit back to the upper Clark Fork River Basin, and how that would work and where those funds would be allocated. The CWIP program, the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program, was identified because it was getting its own separate allocation. And the Greenway Service District was identified because it was getting its own special allocation at that point. It wasn't going to be funded through the Aquatic and Terrestrial Restoration Fund. So that is my interpretation why it was identified as a special project. And in the past, it has ranked very high. There were a large number of ecological services. Ecological restoration always ranked the highest during the grants program as a priority project. So if you were restoring the aquatic or terrestrial resources, that ranked very high. So the Greenway Service District did come forward with numerous projects to integrate with DEQ to do just that, remove additional tailings, do additional revegetation and that type of thing. So I did want to clarify the special projects thing. And just, Dory, the way we have to look at projects today is what is in, what's in front of us today. And what's in front of us today is, a recreational dominant project. It's access features in the trail. Do believe, and we stated in our response to comments that, trails are, they do help protect the resource because people are focused on the trail instead of wandering, haphazardly across the floodplain. So, just as a clarification.
Any other public comments or questions?
Maggie Schmidt, I guess I just wanna, I view it also as, yes, it's recreational, but it's a way to invest in future generations. If you can't experience a resource, are you gonna care about it or are you gonna protect it in the future? And I know it's complicated, multifaceted, but as a parent to a young person, I think having these easily accessible trails where young people can appreciate our resources is important.
Mike Pfaffhausen from Butte. I was recently in Bavaria, southern Germany, and I was struck by what I feel is the long-term vision of the Greenway. And no offense to any of you, but I feel like we have shorted this council on what this finished project could be and what it would mean. We're caught up in a lot of minutia and stuff that is important, but we've not talked about what it could look like in the finished product and its benefit to the region. And while in Bavaria, all of the villages in Bavaria are connected by biking trails. And in every community, there is a place where you can rent bikes and go pedal and go to a little beer place. And I'm not condoning drinking and biking, but have a beer and pedal to the next village and have a beer and pedal to the next village. And we're the closest thing to creating that in the United States. And I think that some of the issue with the Greenway is that it's not finished. And some of the issue is the marketing that has not been done, right? When it is complete and we begin marketing it as your little taste of Bavaria in Southwest Montana, and when people can freely bike between, let's call it Deer Lodge, Anaconda, and Butte, there could be a tremendous benefit. And the project would have an ability with some creativity and some business acumen to fund itself for its long-term O&M needs as well. So I don't want that to be missed by this council, that we feel we keep talking over sections and parcels and minutia and interest and things that matter in the broad scale of the project. But the big picture, the 30,000 foot level of this project, is that it would be extraordinarily meaningful and unique recreational component of Southwest Montana, that it is part of Remedy. It is protective. It provides fishing access on the whole corridor. CFWET would have access on the whole corridor. That's the part we've missed. And I don't want that to go over our heads of what that would do for this region. Because if you've ever been and seen those little villages all connected by bikes and people taking vacations exclusively to go bike between little Bavarian villages, we're not that far away from that here. So
I think, Mike, you're absolutely right. And it's a distinction between a very successful project and a complete failure.
correct.
That's the alternative here. So whatever we can do to make it a success, I think we should.
And Brad Archibald from Butte again, with Minor Technical Services, a consultant to the Greenway Service District. Recognize very clearly that this particular grant application has a lot of recreational aspects to it. But that does not change the fact that the ROD initially called for, as part of the remedy, a recreational corridor through the entire area to help protect the remedy. Some would argue that the ESD mitigated the need for that, but the ESD is very clear in that it does not change the underlying requirements of the ROD. So to meet the requirements of the ROD, we have to complete this entire recreational corridor. So please, I ask that you just keep that in mind as you make your decisions about how to move forward with funding. Thank you.
Yes.
This is Doug Martin again. And, addressing Brad's comment there, the issue that comes up with making it a requirement of the ESD is not that it should be paid for by remedy. It's being paid for by restoration. And, you know, DEQ has made it clear that the trail is not part of the remedy. So, this is a restoration action, that is being implemented. And the recreational corridor, or at least the view of the state, the recreational corridor, that corridor is there. It has cleaned up the recreational standards. So, you know, the greenway is an important component of it, but it's not a requirement of the ROD. It is truly restoration.
Any other comments, questions from the public?
My name is Joel Gerhart. I'm from Helena, Montana. I'm with Gerhart Engineering. I've been working with the Greenway and DEQ and NRD for a long time on a lot of these projects. I love your comment about Bavaria. I was an exchange student in Bavaria when I was in high school. So I remember riding my bike between village to village and having beer when I was in high school because it was legal. But that's when we first started looking at the Greenway project a long time ago. It was with the vision of a nationally, if not internationally significant project. We're talking a stream that was completely dead, 2,000 acres of dead floodplain. And so you look at the effort that was undertaken to clean it up, to restore it, to expand that floodplain through Greenway money, additional tailings removal, Greenway projects to install culverts and expand the floodplain and make the place greener than it was when it started. And to then put into place a public use where you have 24 miles of a stream corridor in southwest Montana with recreational access provided for people of Montana, visitors from out of state, and the local people. I think the value of that is being understated here. I think that was the vision to create this nationally, if not internationally significant project. Now, then we look at the reasons why we asked for the money this time around. And it's not because we asked for anything new. We're asking for what was a budget deficit created by delays in the remediation project. The whole project was designed to be coordinated directly with Remedy from the beginning to the end. And because of the need to do additional removals in the corridor, the Remedy schedule was extended from being completed sometime around 2014 to 2015. They're still working on it. And certain portions of the project could not be constructed until after the remedy was done. Now, the Greenway set aside that we all keep talking about included ecological money and the access features that were included. Again, nothing new has been asked for here. That was a fixed sum of money. The reason why we have a budget shortfall is because we have not accrued any interest on that money. Unlike the CWEP program, there was no interest included in a separate fund. That interest accrued in the general fund that the NRD has right now. It went to the benefit and into the fund and not for the Greenway project. If we had accrued that interest, we would not be here today asking for money. We would have more than enough money to complete the project and maintain it. So the real reason here is the loss in the buying power of the money from estimates done for work that was supposed to be done a long time ago that was delayed by remedy. And now we have a budget shortfall. There's nothing new here, except for the fact that we lost the value, the buying power of the money that the governor set aside to build this project. So I would encourage you right now, don't fumble in the red zone. Finish this project.
Yes.
This is Doug Martin again. Joel's comment about the interest, Greenway was not provided interest. The only projects that was provided interest was the Clark Fork Watershed Education Program. And that was a specific, directive by the governor to set up a separate fund for the Greenway Service District. All of the allocations that we have to the various watersheds, they do not accrue any interest. The interest accrues per the process plan that was developed. That interest accrues and then is reallocated or allocated to priority resources as we know those during the next revision. And that was one of the establishments of the restoration plan, because we knew we didn't know all the priorities at the time. that we were doing the original restoration plan, and those priorities change as we move forward, in previous revisions. So reallocating that, or allocating accrued interest was an important part of that, but no projects have been accrued or have been provided interest except for the Clark Fork watershed education.
This is Christy Beal, and I have a comment. I may not have the complete and detailed understanding of the history of the Greenway Service District that others may have. But for the purpose of being transparent, my concerns are, I have people coming up here saying, we don't want to have matching funds. We don't want to have to do some of the work everybody else is being asked to do. You want to be treated like CFWEP when we're talking about interest, but you don't want to be treated like them or anything like them when we're talking about matching funds. They have to have 50% matching funds. You have 20, we're asking you for 25% matching. I haven't seen a fundraiser in the last 6 months to even start that request. You all have to recognize there's not the same amount of money available this year. You all have to recognize you're not the only entity asking for funding. And you all have to recognize we as a council have a charge we must live up to. And building trails, as far as I read it, is not the highest priority in what we're being asked to do. But we are funding building trails because of all of the reasons that everybody here spoke about as far as why we should be funding the Greenway Service District. But help me understand what I'm to tell the public when I hear, but we don't want to have matching funds, but we want to be treated like them. We want to get interest. So there's all of these extra special considerations that are being asked of this council. I am the one that has to go up there and say to the governor, this is why we're doing, this is why we are recommending this. And then when I'm asked, but aren't these requests, didn't everybody who came up here and spoke for the Greenway Service District tell you these aren't new requests? These are the same requests that have been being asked for since 2000. And then somebody tells me, don't fumble in the red zone. Well, don't fumble for the 95 yards prior to that then, because you're putting it on us to say no to everybody else. So you can have $9 million we don't even have, and then you decide you're going to get reasonable and ask for 3.5, and then we do some checking, do some value engineering, do some whatever you need to do, but you want to make us feel bad for giving you millions of dollars to fund something you've already been given millions of dollars to fund over and over again. I get it. There are obstacles to finishing projects. But don't fumble in the first 95 yards and then ask us not to fumble in the last 5. That's not fair. Those are my comments. Are there any other comments?
Thank you, Council. Brian Holland from Butte. I help provide legal services for the Greenway Service District. I just think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking to be treated the same as aquatic and terrestrial projects, which the Greenway project as a whole is more akin to than a recreational project. If you take a step back, and I'm hearing everything today, it seems like the Greenway is being penalized for being so successful in the past and getting the funding with the ecological features, etc. Everyone understood from the beginning that the recreational access feature components would come last in the project. The trustee understood that back in 2012 when he allocated the money to complete the project. So we're not asking for special treatment. We're asking to be treated the same as aquatic and terrestrial projects. And we will go seek matching funds, be required to seek matching funds. But the difference is the Greenway project is not a recreational project.
That's clear if you read our comments that we submitted. And it goes back to the trustees' designation of the project as a special project, which goes to the fact it was work on the exact injured resources of Silverbow Creek and had a component of, restoration and remedy and coordination. So it's really kind of a unique project, totally different from other recreational projects like Milltown Overlook. So all we're asking is we treat it the same as the trustee treated it back in 2012 when the allocation was made to complete the project. And we're fully fine trying to find, we're always looking for ways to save money. We're looking for matching funds, but to make it a requirement because it's a quote recreation project, that's the problem that the Greenway has with the current plan. And if you read our comments, I think it'll be clear why we feel so strongly, and NRDP's own documents document that it's not a recreation project. So, thank you.
I have a question for you, sir. As counsel for the Greenway Service District, are you withdrawing Dory's request that the council not require matching funding?
No, not required to seek. We're saying treat us the same as aquatic projects. Where you're required to seek matching funding, but not required to get 25% matching funds before you can even move ahead. That's the difference. But impose matching fund requirement on every project, aquatic project. If you're singling out recreation projects, and again, I'm back to the Greenway was never ever treated as a recreation project. So here we are at the end of the day, and now it's tagged as a recreation project. And they're saying, oh, by the way, what comes with that is you have to get 25% matching funds, not just seek them, you have to get them before you can proceed with the project. But we don't have any control on granting agencies. If we don't get the funds, the project won't be completed, which I don't think anyone would want to see. Steve Hill and many comments were in, let's complete the project. So anyway, hopefully that clarifies.
Raylan Brandel, Clark Park Watershed Education Program. I know we're well over break, so I'll be fast. I just want to make a comment for the record that the panacea of interest has not kept up with inflation. So although it gave us a little bit of extra room in that budget, it didn't meet the long-term predictions that our actuary had thought it would meet. And indeed, we ended up being short. And I think it was 2 years short. Is that correct, Doug? So that interest allocation, moving us out of a large fund into a small fund, it's just math. So just for the record, thank you.
Any other public comment, questions? Any additional questions from council? All right, we're going to take a 15-minute. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay. Before we put any of these to motion, we're going to take a 15-minute break. I'm going to ask council if you could please just take a 5-minute break. I know we've got a lot, but we're going to need to put together a plan to approach the motion or motions that will flow from what we just talked about, short of the broken circle land. Thank you. We could go ahead.
I'm not there yet. Get out of the way. Get in there.
Brian?
Yeah, I get this here now.
25%.
But those aren't allocations, those are for the future projects requests that are not that are provided to this. So,
Well, and we're applying, but we are asking people in this funding allocation to get 25% matches. Right?
Yes.
The speaker provide, yeah.
First time ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the phrase in the process plan and the recreation plan. It does recreation dominant projects. Projects that the actual resource.
I got a thumbs up.
Tell me what Seth's number is.
I don't think so.
Sorry. Please. Can you get it for me?
Aquatic Terrestrial is that need to seek it versus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him from this number. I'm gonna call him in the next 60 seconds. He gives it from my cell.
Seek is,
So, what's that?
seek is new.
That is a new word also.
I just put it in the recreation dominance, what that number. It's kind of gray.
It is a gray area.
Do any of you guys have Seth's number?
And we get into.
They said he's a.
So for something that would be considered.
Present, yes.
Would be. Trail.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
For further travel, they don't tell me there's a resource benefit.
Brian, please tell Seth, text his cell phone number to this one. 406. I'm sure he doesn't want it on that. Hang on. Seth, tell him, yeah, 406-531-2505. Tell him that's Christie's cell.
This conversation. This should be taken.
Yeah, we're just talking about, I mean, we can talk about how to do all this.
All right.
The questions and comments can be. You're just trying to get us about good.
Okay, so he gave me an office number.
Great, what is it?
It is 406.
Yep.
675. 2700. 6, and then it'll be extension 6255.
Oh.
Hi, this is Christy Deal for Seth. Makepeace. And his last, or his extension number is 6255. Thank you. I just want to get general consensus on how we're gonna approach the motion thing, much like how this came about, but without them having to watch.
Yeah.
As much of it. So then my next thought would be, hi, is this Seth? Seth, this is Christy Beal, and I'm gonna put you on speakerphone, you're on my cell phone right now. Council members are meeting during the break here to try to figure out this motion process, and we didn't want to leave you out, okay? Thank you, here you go, you're on speaker now. All right. Okay, so there was a previously proposed motion that recommended, that combined approval of both funding, or revisions and the funding allocations. And it's pretty clear to me that that motion not getting this acceptable. So my thought is that we have, we break that out. So let's have first be a motion to handle the revisions to the plan, and then that we have a motion on each of the funding elements.
Yes.
Do you guys feel like that's a good approach? Yeah. I just thought we're setting ourselves up for failure on this. And then I think that we talk about how to word those motions. We can do that in a public setting. This could be a public setting. I don't care if it comes to this. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going down a rabbit hole, everybody else. And is there a better option?
Revisions, take, try to get us together, closed door discussions about funding, and come back to another meeting.
I don't believe you can do it closed door.
We can't do it before discuss the funding.
You can only do that for a personnel matter or legal matters.
We'd have to do that discussion about funding here. Talk about, yes, there has to be an option for them to get public comment on our motion.
You guys give up one motion to do different things.
So now we need a list. After we get these revisions, we have
FWP Milltown, we're looking at one.
FWP mill, okay?
So, yeah.
Well, we're not talking about, we're just getting a list, just, next one.
Earmark.
The next one is just getting a list, folks. Help me with the list. If you're not helping me with the list, you're hindering me. Right now. What's that? Chris?
Projects. I'm going back.
I'm going back. You know, maybe we can just do this and the public will help us. We're gonna run out of time. What's that? I know. Doug, you have a list? Brian, you have a list? The projects that we're gonna do a motion on separate, that we're gonna be funding. Is there a list? If so, please provide. Okay.
Is it the product monitoring?
Number one, Doug, is aquatic monitoring. Okay.
Or it's slow? Oh, it might be the slow.
Pardon?
Yes.
Oh, he's typing them up. Okay. Oh, thank you.
What else is in there?
Aquatic monitoring? Well, we need to have them up, not regardless of whether we had an issue or not.
Put them up, terrestrial.
Terrestrial projects.
Milltown State Park funding.
Milltown. Okay.
And then. I think it's the Greenway.
Less the ones we specifically discuss, instead of bringing them up, we funding less these.
Figure out which ones we.
That money needs to come on.
We have to talk about that. We have to do which one, the Greenway Service District is down there, no? Milltown's on, okay. We got that. Okay. All right.
Could you describe, you said there's a short.
I feel like I'm wondering.
No, you're helping. Is that you?
That's the product one.
I haven't put it up, it's got that one.
Double checking. And then project with section 2.
Is there anything?
Milltown State.
Anything on section 2? Would you add, please? Support for. Is there any funding allocation that's being done for terrestrial projects? Okay, that's right.
Okay. So then Milltown State Park funding.
Okay.
And then.
That's on there, those are on there.
You guys.
Still talking about Greenway.
Seaflex.
Oh, and then Seaflex.
Brian's adding. Thanks, Brian.
I know there was one more project though, because there's that Powell County Trail project.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's a Tri-County Trail.
it's like but I don't think that's what it's for. It's just for the Powell County Trail System, isn't it? It's not for the Trail Coalition.
We're gonna get this list and then I'll start this meeting back up.
And then it like.
All right.
So I don't, I think.
Trail, your lodge.
All right, are you guys ready? Be my
Oh,
proposal.
that's the Trail Coalition.
What's that? Trail Coalition, it's a coalition, multi-trail. Heard of that. I'm asking all of your help, how we put this forward, because we got a long night ahead of us. We can't do it close, we don't have to debate, but you can state your positions, or we can debate how the clause is, and you can state what you feel about the motion. And you don't have to vote for that. But, we're gonna try to, I'm going to propose. Yeah, and I really want everybody's input here, because I don't, try to not have every.
Yeah.
Let's get through what we can get through. Some things might not make it through, and we'll figure that out. And I would love for you guys to tell us too, like, hey, but you guys put us in quandary when we do this. We might put you in a quandary. We might just, but we're gonna try to get as many things accomplished as we can, that there's agreement.
Moving around money.
Yeah, I would just call for a motion on each thing. I feel like we've already debated them and taken comments. I would call for a motion on each one.
On the funding allocation,
Call for a motion, and you get a motion in a second. If you get a motion, no one second, it dies. And you call for a motion. You have to have a motion, and then you get a second. If you don't get a second, motion dies. Your motion called. Public gets the ability to comment again. Yeah. And then you get a vote, and the vote either passes or doesn't.
Yeah. That's.
It doesn't pass. The original sustain itself, or you would call for a new motion, or would you call for a new motion?
so if we end up saying, okay, these are the order in which we take these up would be important. Because we may say, hey, aquatic monitoring, everybody's like, okay, yes, please do the aquatic monitoring, nobody's arguing against that. I'm just saying this. Don't know that that's the case. But then when we get to Rock Creek, if that gets shut down, and then Warm Springs doesn't get funded, then what's done to do with that money? So we gotta think about that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah.
So in your motion, you have to say, like, if I were to vote to deny Rock Creek, I would say, like, my motion would be to deny Rock Creek the $6,000 and reallocate that money.
And one of the things you could do is you could leave it, so you have to shoot into, you know, other.
Yeah.
I don't know. Put it out there. Just have a preference. Put it at this level.
I'm gonna take up aquatic monitoring first. And see what.
Yeah, I guess
I feel like those are the best chances. Okay.
Here's a question we just went through. A motion on the floor to say, we're gonna unfund, and there's a second, and there's a debate, and then there's a vote. Hey, now, the original.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a recommendation that we have to go yea or nay. Yeah, but if somebody says, I don't want to vote on that completely, I want that, the motion is to fund it as recommended minus 400,000, and that failed, then we're still on the recommendation.
You have to vote on it, right?
Say no. Now there's $250,000 that.
What's LBF, Brian?
Well, that says, well, and then.
Yep. Somebody's not gonna know, and we need to know.
Priority resources. Where there's.
Terrestrial, aquatic.
So
They were talking. That's not on the table. Yeah. We're now under, for eliminating.
Okay.
Devo.
Well, you leave the allocation to them. They say.
Yeah.
Calling this meeting back to order. Hold me off, if you'd like to. This happened before once. Yes. Yesterday, I believe. All right, council. Once you've all had a chance to get the liquids, water you need, whatever, let's get back. All right. Do we have, Seth, are you still there or do you want to go back on?
I'm watching and listening on my phone, if that would work for you.
Yes, yes. I will, if you can hear, okay, that'd be great. Okay. So we have folks remoting in. I want to remind everyone that we're going to need people to speak up and speak clearly. And if you're from the public, please come to the podium. We have taken questions and comments on the funding allocations and the plan revisions from the council as well as from the public. And we are now at the spot where we have to seek motions. There was a proposal that Doug put up during his talk about a proposed motion that addressed the changes to the plans plus the funding allocations. It is my thoughts, and I would encourage all the other council to share theirs, that combining a motion on the revisions to the plans plus the funding all in one is not going to be productive. So we would like to, I think that we need to have a separate motion on just the proposed UCFRB Advisory Council, or excuse me, the NRDP staff's proposed 2023 revisions to the USFRB Aquatic and Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plan as set forth in the draft response to the comments. My understanding is that those changes to the plan are set forth. There's, do we have those slides?
That's.
The administrative, the plan language, the slides you put together.
Those are the for section 1 and 2, Brian.
These were in Doug's presentation, sections 1 and 2.
Keep going up.
Okay.
Right
Right
there.
there. Right.
1 and 2. Back up one. There you go.
So there were administrative updates only on sections 1 and 2. Next slide. And there were additional revisions recommended that are indicated here on the slide that Doug presented, entitled section 3.2, revision to flow development process continued.
The next one, it goes to,
This is Doug now speaking.
Doug, this is Doug. Go to section 6, Brian. Go down 2 slides.
Right there. And then Doug's slide, this is Christy Beals, Doug's slide entitled section 6, implementation. Those are the 4 slides that reflect the proposed 2023 revisions to the the UCFRB Aquatic and Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plan language. Council, do we have a motion on the revisions?
I don't move, we approve, that's written.
So that we have a full motion? Are we saying is it your motion, Mick, that the the UCFRB Advisory Council recommends the proposed 2023 revisions to the UCFRB Aquatic and Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plans as revised in the September 2023 draft responses to comments?
That is correct. Yeah. Motion.
And as reflected in the
NRD draft.
Okay, so let's talk about, let's make sure we're comfortable with the language of the motion.
Second.
Before we second it, let's make sure we're comfortable with the motion. The UCFRB Advisory Council recommends the proposed 2023 revisions to the UCFRB Aquatic and Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plans as revised in the September 2023 response to comments as reflected in the NRDP proposed draft. Do we need to include reference to those slides so it's clear?
Slides don't cover everything.
Okay, but the comments will, the response to the comments will. Okay.